All of the pots and the sculptures that you saw in the previous photographs all have something in common. They all use a technique of mine that I call clay inlay. And I'm going to demonstrate that technique today. Before we begin, I just want to show you all the things that you're going to need, and you should have them all at hand before you start making anything. Today I'm going to use two different types of clay. One is a porcelain clay, and one is a stoneware clay that has a little iron in it, just so it's a beautiful color when I'm working with it. This is my favorite tool, my trusty rolling pin. This is probably somebody's grandma had this rolling pin. This is my favorite item in the studio. Then I have a fettling knife and just some wire cutter to cut into the clay. I have grog. I have a board to roll the clay on. And then I have newspaper. Any kind of newspaper will be fine. Very important is to have water and a sponge to wipe your hands, and a towel, so anything to wash your hands and wipe them off. The first thing I'm going to do is put some grog on the board. The grog is low-fired clay that's been ground up, and it's used very much like a pizza dough maker would use to prevent the dough from sticking to the board. Go. Next, I'm going to take the wire cutter, cut a chunk of clay like that, put it on the board, and start to roll it out. So I'm rolling out the clay, I'm turning it around, and you see it doesn't stick on the board. That's because of the grog. Now I'm going to switch to the porcelain clay. Every time I switch clay, I have to make sure that my hands are perfectly clean and dry. So I'm going to wash my hands and dry them off before I go to the porcelain clay. Now that my hands are clean, I can go to this white porcelain clay, and I'm going to take a chunk and I'm going to just lay it on top of the darker clay. You can see that I'm using the heel of my hand, but I can use my fingers, just generally laying it on the top. Before I begin the next step, I'm going to wash my hands again. I'm going to now take the rolling pin and roll the two clays together. But if I were to do that just this way, I would be rolling the red clay onto the white clay, and it would totally get contaminated. So at this point, this is where your newspaper comes in. Just lay your newspaper on, and then you roll like so. Very gently. I'm not rolling very hard. Both ways. And I'm going to lift that off, and the white clay has now been pressed into the darker red clay. Now I noticed when I rolled it with the newspaper on it that it was getting a little stuck to the board, so I'm just going to lift an edge, add a little bit more grog so that it can, see how that, you want your clay to be able to move around easily. I washed my hands again just to make sure they were clean, and now I'm taking some of this red clay and I'm going to make the final decoration, which will be abstract animals walking along. And I'm just going to, here's their body, here's a body, here's a body, here's a body, and a little head right there, a little head, and a little head. I'm going to roll out some coils for the feet and the tails and the little details. And you can see I'm making very thin coils. Okay, let's see. We'll have 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. And I have to do it again. Now I rolled out enough of those very thin coils for what I need for the feet and any other details. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to give you an artist's eye view of little details that I'm going to do to finish off this piece. These are these very thin coils that I had, and I think I'm going to make a tail. And I think I'm going to make another tail over here. And I think I'm going to make another tail over here. And I think I'm going to probably make an ear. And then I'm going to add it to the tail. Okay. You'll notice that the little legs that I made went past the porcelain and went on to the other clay. The idea of using this same clay as the background is that you can have this overlap and it won't show at all. I've washed my hands again, and I can't emphasize enough how in this technique your hands have to be clean for every different step. I'm going to take a piece of newspaper again and I'm going to roll it out, roll the two clays together. I just put in the newspaper gently, and I'm gently, very gently rolling in two directions. And I take it out. Now, what am I going to do with this piece that I showed you? You can leave it just the way it is, add a foot, and make a platter, as you can see here. Or you can cut it and make another inlay, and you can make a very simple pot, like a flower vase, or a little more complicated sculpture. Okay, I've demonstrated this piece, and it's obviously raw ware. It has to dry, and then it's going to bisque. And when I approach the glazing, this is what I do with this technique. There is only one glaze used over the whole pot. It's either poured or dipped. Again, it's one glaze, and that glaze is very important. I will give you illustration of two different glazes that I used on exactly the same technique. Here is one, and this is one of the pieces that's like in the show, and it's a turquoise glaze. It's a barium glaze, and it's fired to cone 6 in oxidation kill, either a gas kill or an electric kill. This is the exact same technique used with an entirely different glaze. It's a luster glaze, a Chino glaze, that's fired at a cone 10 kill reduction in gas firing. And you can see the difference, exact same technique, two different glazes. Both using one glaze poured over the whole piece. One glaze poured over the whole piece. Wherever it hits the porcelain, it's that bright turquoise. In this one, where it hits the stoneware, it's dark. In this one, it's wherever it hits the porcelain, it's white, and then wherever it hits the stoneware, it's a more bronzy color.